first time, you are very much welcome. This is where we provide you with free legal advice. So if you're currently going through any legal situation where you are confused about anything or unsure of what step to take, feel free to call in at the appropriate time to ask your questions. However, as always, we begin with our focus, and today it is all about legal remedies available to victims of domestic violence. What legal remedies are available to those people who have fallen victim to domestic violence? Yeah. So while we start the conversation, let's understand first of all, what do we mean when we say domestic violence? What is it all about?
Thank you very much, Ruth. Domestic violence, like we've always talked about, I'm sure this is not this is not the only
Cannot be the first time.
the only episode we've handled the issue of domestic violence. It is simply violent or an aggressive behavior that one displays with the intention to cause harm or to cause any form of trauma to another. Okay. Now, why it's termed domestic is because it involves people who are in a home or persons who are familiar with each other. They have an ongoing relationship. In Nigeria, of course, or all over the world, domestic violence is an act that everybody preaches about eliminating on daily basis because certain issues had arisen and persons have become victims to the point of death of domestic violence. So it's not always applicable to the woman gender. It's also applicable to the men. So it's all persons, or in all spheres of life on this earth. Yeah, that is basically the
even though most times once we hear domestic violence, we picture a man beating his wife mercilessly and all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's just
but then it can either be to the female or to the male.
Definitely.
Interesting. Now, I don't know, but what are the things, I know you're not a psychologist, but then what are those things that influences that behavior?
Before I talk about that, I would like to help us understand that domestic violence takes all forms. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental, it could even involve psychological, it all comes in, those different forms. Now, it could entail some practices which are called the influencers of domestic violence. Now, these things aid the happening of domestic violence. Now, one of those is sociocultural practices. What was in my mind is the traditional practices.
Okay.
when in Nigeria, there's a common understanding amongst us Nigerians, even amongst the victims themselves, that somehow domestic violence is okay to happen. It's okay because it's trying to repair a particular act. It's trying to fix
that is usually when this domestic violence we're talking about involves physical assault, so to speak.
Exactly. Sometimes mental. Sometimes when it involves emotional trauma or abuse.
It always does, but I think as Africans, as Nigerians, most times we only focus on what happens physically. We really have not paid so much attention to the emotions, to the emotional part.
Now, the emotional part that is usually ignored, even when you try to voice it out, everybody finds it as you complaining too much.
Yeah.
So they feel that if you're violated emotionally,
do you have food? Do you eat food? Yes. Are you living under? Do you have a roof over your head? Yes.
That's fine.
Why are you complaining?
So why are you complaining?
Not knowing that. I mean, everything. I think it's a full package when you get married and all that.
That's one of the problems. There's a common belief that it's for a correctional purpose. Whatever domestic violence
as an
that
adult,
occurs, even as an adult, it's a correctional purpose, and then everybody tends to accept it. Now, another practice is like the traditional practices that are harmful to persons. For instance, there are some societies you come to, widows experience some form of practices that the culture, the persons around had accepted it. And then you find it really harmful to these persons as human, violating their rights, their constitutional rights. But then everybody sees it as normal. Now, that is one of the influencers, the traditional practices, harmful traditional practices. It makes people see it as, being acceptable in the society. in the society and then being really practicable, and then nobody says a word about it. Now, one of the other influencers is substance abuse. Remember one time we talked about substance abuse to mean the using of substances, whether chemical or non-chemical, for purposes that are other than the intended medical purposes. And then we talked about how these substances could be adverse to your behavior. They could, and then they have consequences as well. So sometimes persons who are taking these substances either as an overdose or taking them below the prescription of the medical experts would have the ability to be violent to another, whether it's emotionally or physically, however the case may be. Because at that point in time, they are operating without their original or their reasonable thoughts, reasonable sense of reasoning at that point in time. So it could make them behave in a way that on a normal they would behave. Not. Yeah. Then another influencer is couple age disparity. Now, a lot of people might be wondering why I brought in this age disparity. In our society today, marriages and relationships happen between persons of different age grades, and it's normal.
Especially when the man is older.
when the man is older.
That seems to be the normal type.
Yeah, it's quite normal. But somehow, God has created us in very unique ways to have some form of respect for an older person. And, you might not even know when you're doing it unintentionally. Now, the reason I brought this is because of our trending issues in the society between young men who engage in relationships with older women. Now, in our society, of course, to a great extent as it is right now, some people don't think, well, there's any problem with that, and then you find these women, demanding respect or demanding some form of, let's say, emotional satisfaction from the younger man who is involved with her. And then the younger man, knowing that he's a man and trying to uphold his ego, might want to rebel. And that, in most cases, causes domestic violence. Now, of course, he might not even physically assault her, but he can do that mentally or emotionally. I brought this topic very importantly because it's playing out in our society today. Now, if you notice, a lot of cases had come up of killings and maiming of ex-lovers, husbands and wives. And most times, if you look into the issues, you would find out that there's a case of age disparity. Yeah, because, like I said, especially when it involves an older woman and a younger man, there's a need for demand of satisfaction of whatever type. And so it causes domestic violence. Another influencer is, of course, infertility. Now, most men who find themselves, or women who find themselves in some homes, would want to have the children of their own, or someone they could call a child. Cases of infertility had caused a lot of problems. And then the thing is, of course, I'm not a medical expert, but I believe that, some cases actually have solutions or viable provisions for persons to embark on that journey together. Most times people get really emotional about it, and that could influence their character to bring out some parts of them that you usually won't be there because of
the person. How come you're not getting pregnant?
And then everybody is tense, and the family is really tense, and there are cases of being violated coming up also. So these are like the common influencers or
things that could easily influence,
easily cause or influence domestic violence in our society today.
Sadly so. So since we have this happening in the society, it is good for people to know that there are certain actions they can take, there are some remedies.
And there are remedies available for victims, survivors, and then there are penalties for violators.
Okay, would love to hear all of that. So where do we begin?
Thank you. Okay, let's start with cases of survivors.
Okay.
Or victims. Victims of domestic violence in Nigeria need to also understand that in as much as They've been provision of certain legislations to guide and protect you as a person. The Constitution is the supreme legislation standing to protect you as a person, as a citizen in Nigeria. The Constitution protects us. It provides for our fundamental human rights that kicks totally against any form of violence. Now, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act that was enacted in 2015 was enacted to not only protect victims of domestic violence, but also provide a place of protection for them. Provide penalties to punish the offenders. Now, this act had gone beyond just providing that, but to also make provisions for prohibition and reintegration of such persons to the society, especially by accredited service providers, government agencies, and non-governmental organizations, to make sure that these persons have access to free medical care, psychological facilities.
Okay,
or
that's
even
just what I wanted to ask. Because will you get the same response from these agencies if you appear there without any physical harm done to you, and claim that you have been psychologically abused or violated or anything like that? I mean, will they take you serious if they don't see any physical bruises on your body?
Definitely, you're going to be taken serious, because the act had gone further to define more than the provisions of penal code and criminal code on the cases of violence, on matters that are related to violence. For instance, in the case of rape, the criminal code had provided that rape involves the sexual organs that we are conversant with, but then the act had gone beyond that to define rape not to only mean the penetration of the common sexual organs we know, but any other part of the body without the consent of whomever you're doing that to. Now, such parts, of course, I'm not going to mention because they are quite, but then, as it is today, sex had gone beyond just involving the normal sexual organs. And then persons who come to say that they were raped, and then there are no forms of traces in their genitals as is provided for in the criminal code, they will find it difficult to get remedy in accordance with the provided law. But then this law, that is the the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, had gone further, to state that a person might be penetrated in any other part of the body and it would still amount to rape. And then the person will also be charged if the person is found guilty by the court of law. Yes. So that is an instance. Now, the law had also gone further to provide for penalties against issues like female circumcision. Yeah. And then, for such punishment, for instance, the person is found guilty of committing such acts, the person would be charged to 2 years imprisonment, not less than 2 years imprisonment, or an option of fine of 100,000 naira, or even both.
Is this law? Yeah, it's a law. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it? I mean, applicable in all states? Because talking about
it hasn't been adopted in all states. Yes.
Because of course, there are some of those states that still are engaged in that act.
Definitely, yes. Okay. It's not been adopted in all states.
So this is where I get to ask you a question that perhaps you may not have an answer to. So why are they yet to accept that and adopt it?
It's accepted in Nigeria as a law.
Yeah, I mean for the other states.
Yeah, because of the let's say because of the issues that are that
the sentiments attached to the whole cultural thing,
culture, and then religion and some other sentiments attached to various persons and the different ethnic groups.
Okay.
It's not going to be that easy, but of course it's a presiding law of the land, and it's still presiding. So if it's not practicable, let's say for instance in a particular state down there in the east, and you're a victim of such crime, and then you come to the FCT to make a report in any of the accredited service providers, like NAPTIP, for instance.
Okay.
Then you'll be heard. if you take the matter to the courts, you're also going to get judgments that will be very valid enough to punish the offenders. So because it's a federal act.
All right.
Thank you. So, for instance, I was given instances. For instance, when it has also made provision for forceful ejection of your spouse. If you eject your spouse or your partner, from your
where
home,
you both are living together.
Or where you both live together, there's penalty for that.
Forceful ejection.
Yes, forceful ejection. Like packing the person's things and
so all these out. African men that can like to send their wives packing and say, Mama Junior, come and go, I don't love you anymore and all that. So, okay.
There are penalties for that. There's also provision for abandonment of your children and dependents. There's provision for that and there are penalties. There's also the provision for incest. So the Act has also recognized all of these, crimes.
So all of these domestic things that are going on, where exactly can one go to? Where do you go to now to have all of these addressed?
You can go to the court of law.
Okay.
Yeah, it's safer. You go to the court of law to have all of, because they are all crimes. So when you go to the court of law, that is where you're going to be awarded your compensation. I like the fact
that you said it's safer, because some people are scared to death to come out and say my husband does this or my wife does this.
The Act also protects,
because of how violent and maybe you don't know the kind of connections that person has. You're so scared to come out and report because you may get more than what you've been receiving from that person. So I think many people would also just hold back and not say anything. So what kind of protection does one get, especially, as victim?
Now, okay, the Act ensures the smooth operation of law. In that sense, it protects complainants and also ensures that persons who have who makes attempts to frustrate investigations concerning such complaints, or persons who would protect prosecution to go on, would be punished. And then they will be liable for felony.
Okay, for instance, you go and you report. They will keep you there to protect you, or they will bring you back home, or you come on.
Rehabilitation homes. That's why I said.
Because all of these are done by. Where would you have packed all your things before you go to report, or you just report and you know that you're not going back to that house?
Well, I don't know what form the victim would take, to protect themselves. But I know that the Act had provided for victims of domestic violence to be protected by law. That's why I mentioned that, the Act ensures that service providers, especially accredited service providers, would protect this person by making sure that these persons are taken to rehabilitation homes or are integrated into the society, and also protected. Their identities would be protected, especially from their violators, and their violators would be punished for the offense.
Okay, we'll come back and talk some more on what happens to the perpetrators of such domestic violence and all that. Stay with us after this commercial break. We'll be right back.
Welcome, my dear friends.
Human Rights Radio. Your 100% effort is not good enough. Give me 101.1 effort.
Ọ bụ ife eji esi nri, ọ bụ akwa na akpụkpọ ụkwụ, ka ọ bụ akpa ụmụ gị ji eje akwụkwọ na ife iji achọ mma. Gbalubia Halibis Mall, isi ụlọ ngwaahịa anyị dị na +660 Cadastral Zone B1, Franca Febua Crescent Zone E, Apo Legislative Quarters, Gudu District, Abuja. Anyị nwekwara ụlọ ngwaahịa anyị ọzọ na number 1 Medical Center Road, Maraba, Abuja. Nke ikpeazụ bụ na number 21 Sariki Meizabo Road, opposite FMC, Kefi, Nasarawa State. Gbaa anyị na ekwentị. Akara ekwentị ị ga-eji nweta anyị bụ 08159 ka mkpọkwa ya n'olu ndị iti 08159510000. Halibis Mall nwere ife niile ị chọrọ n'ofu ebe. Ngwaahịa anyị adịrị ọnụ ma dịrị mma nke ukwuu. Gbalubia na Halibis Mall. Nnọọ.
Join our diverse team of legal experts as we provide education and guidance to you, our listeners, on a broad array of issues raised by the modern legal landscape, absolutely free on Probono Chambers, airing on Human Rights Radio 101.1 FM, redefining broadcasting.
Human Rights Radio.
Thank you for staying with us. Pro Bono Chambers continues right here on Human Rights Radio 101.1 FM. Today we are looking at legal remedies available to victims of domestic violence, and we were talking about what is obtainable, what provisions are made to protect victims, where they can go to talk about these things going on. In your explanation, you mentioned incest. Is it okay? How would you describe it? Is it like a crime, or because I mean, so far it just looks like something that people don't want to hear happen in families, as we hear stories about some fathers, violating their own daughters, and stuff like that. These are really, really disheartening things. So, will it also be
siblings?
Yes, or siblings.
Exactly.
Yeah, very close relatives having kind of knowledge of each other. Okay.
Because of the society we are from, issues like that, we look at it from the traditional angle or the moral angle.
Yeah, most times they hush. You don't even get to hear about it.
Yeah, or where a child is involved, then they look at it from the perspective of the provision of the Child Rights Act to protect the child. The issue of incest is a trending, issue in the society. Sometimes most people don't want to talk about it because, like I said, it's morally wrong, and then traditionally and culturally wrong, religiously wrong, but then it's also a crime. And the act had provided for the issue of incest, whether it's with the consent of the victim or without the consent of the victim.
Okay.
Now, if it's with the consent of the victim,
the person will not even be a victim anymore.
No, the person is still a victim. Now, the act provided that the person is still a victim.
Okay.
And then the perpetrator would be liable to 5 years imprisonment with no option of fine. Now, if it's without the consent of the victim, then the person, whoever the person is, the offender, would be liable to 10 years of imprisonment without the option of fine. So that doesn't have any option of fine. That's just what the case is. And thank God for the law.
Yeah, interestingly, I mean, whoever knew that, such an act was there to, protect people who may have been victims to this in their families. Now, what happens to the perpetrators? What punishment is available for those who engage in domestic violence?
Yeah, well, it depends on the particular form of violence of the perpetrator.
If it's physical or if it's emotional.
If it's physical, if it involves the act of, let's say, acid baths, or if it involves the act of physical assault, and or if it involves killing of the other party, there's a particular penalty for every crime of domestic violence stipulated in the act.
Okay.
Then, for instance, persons who try to frustrate any investigation, any ongoing investigation that affects the cases of domestic violence, or in any way you give a statement so that you could protect the offender, you'll be guilty of felony. You'll be found guilty of felony, and then the punishment for that is 3 years, a term, not more than 3 years imprisonment.
So if you're a family member or a friend and you feel like you want to protect your friend or your brother who abuses his wife, or a wife who does that to her husband,
exactly, so
and you're found,
that's it. And then with an option of fine of 200,000. But the case is most times actually comes with the both. The penalty and the fine will not become an option again. It has to come with the penalty. Well, then if you give a false statement, of course, maliciously to implicate another person, and you've alleged the person and you want the person implicated and sentenced.
For instance,
and then the person is found not guilty.
Yeah, and I say, oh, my husband, abuses me. He does this, he does that. Meanwhile, he's not doing that.
Exactly. After investigation and the person was not found to be guilty of all that, you're also liable for some term of imprisonment not exceeding 12 months.
Okay, 1 year.
And a fine of 200,000.
Interesting. Yes. Well, this is a call to those who may be currently undergoing such situation to know that they can actually come out.
True.
instead of saying, because there are so many people, and you know, as it is, the whole African mentality, I would say, is that once you get married, then you have to be there, especially when children are involved. You say, oh, I don't want my family to, you know, I don't want my kids to grow separately without a father or without a mother. Yeah, as the case may be. Meanwhile, you're risking your life, because most of these things, at the end of the day, it could lead to the loss of life of, you know, the victim. Okay, so you can report this. You can go to the court and, you know, tell them exactly what's going on, and you will be protected in the process.
Remedies available for you.
And if found guilty, the perpetrator of such domestic violence would also be punished. Well, interesting. Well, if you have more questions, feel free to call in and ask those questions right now. If it hasn't anything to do with the topic, it's all right. If not, at the same time, as long as it is anything about legal matters, feel free to call in and ask your questions as well. The number to call is 081-8999-1011. That's 081-8999-1011. It's Probono Chambers on Human Rights Radio 101.1 FM. Let's get to hear your questions right now. Hello? Hello? Okay. I don't know if you could hear me or not, but you can call right back. It's 081-8999-1011. Hello? Please turn off your radio.
Yes, I've off it completely.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes. I've actually the program people are doing now.
Okay, what's your name?
See, my name is Ability. I'm calling from
Your name is what? Ability.
Yes.
Okay.
And please, I need a suggestion from you people, because the program you are making it like I hear you, but I need something from you people.
You need what?
I need help from you people.
Okay, what do you need?
Hello?
Go ahead. What is it you want?
Okay. My uncle, somebody gave my uncle, to my uncle in the house. The later on, moved the pregnant. They are both pregnant without my knowledge. And the time my uncle is pregnant, they call me. I asked my uncle to say, yes, this is the guy. I called the guy.
Mr. Ability.
I can't really hear you.
Yeah, your voice is not clear at all.
So try and be a bit audible.
Okay, I'm thinking he may have to call back. Please call back, because we couldn't tell exactly what you were saying, okay? Sorry about that. 081-8999-1011. Pro Bono Chambers, if you have questions, this is the time for you to call in for your advice. Hello? Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Pro Bono Chambers.
Thank you. We are speaking with Mr. Wisdom.
Mr. Wisdom, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Don Sabana.
Good morning, Mr. Wisdom.
Yeah, you said something earlier this morning. You said if a woman is kind of a woman's husband is let up from the house, there is a constitutional provision for that.
That's
Are you talking about forcefully ejecting a partner out of the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's
Yeah, she said that.
yes, I said that. It's provided for
I want
in.
to ask you. Yeah, I want to ask a question.
He said, what's the constitutional provision for that?
Isn't that when you marry a woman and at the same time you just do a kind of traditional marriage, normal, but there's nothing like wedding or court wedding and all the rest of that. And at the same time you find out that along the line, while living with a woman, you find out that maybe both of you are not compatible.
Okay.
And you exactly ask maybe you try to begin with that. That this thing, I think this is not working. This marriage is not working. Because what you really want is, what you expect, you are not getting it. I showed you when you ask that woman to go, or I will decide to get her up to the house. Is there any offense on that?
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom.
Number 3.
Oh, number 3, okay.
Sorry, I'm not done.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2. When you marry the woman and you have not weathered it, there is not kind of weathered in court. And at the end of the day, both of you separate. Presence of each other. Does that woman have any right to your property? But I know when you wed in court, when you divorce the woman, at the end of the day, you share your property with her. Am I right? Share your property with her.
That's
when you are not wedded in court, does she have any right to your property?
Okay.
To make claims or find the hair, stuff like that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Wisdom.
Yeah.
I will answer you from question number 1. Thank you for your questions, Mr. Wisdom. Question number 1, he asked for the constitutional provision for, when I earlier said if you throw your wife out of the house, there are penalties for that. Now, the constitution of the 1999 constitution of Nigeria.
But he's saying, what if you did marry her in the court?
No, I'm talking of question number 1, the constitutional provision.
No, yeah, he still said that.
Whether you married her in the court or not, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act was provided for any form of violence against another. Now, that provision is for forceful eviction or forceful throwing out of your spouse out of the house. So it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has everything to do with the provision of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which is for persons or victims of violation.
So whether you marry this person
of violence,
in the court,
whether
or
it's in
not,
the courts or customary marriage or any form of marriage, as far as there's an existing contractual marriage between the parties, the protection is on either of the parties undergoing such situation.
Okay.
That's the answer to that.
Question number 2.
Question number 2, he said, if you don't marry...
If you did not marry, in the court, does the person lay claims to any of your
property?
Yeah.
The answer to that is no. Because the contract in the courts ensures there are certain provisions that must guard the parties.
Jubilating with your answer?
He doesn't have to jubilate, yeah?
I don't even know if he...
the law recognizes any form of marriage by a licensed organization.
Okay.
So it's either you did it in church or you had a formal traditional wedding that bride price was paid, or you had the court marriage. So if you didn't marry her in courts, and then there's a contract to show that both of you would part with either of the other person's property at a point of divorce, then that's not applicable to you. The third one was if you didn't...
Was there a third?
There wasn't a third.
No.
Okay, it was just 2.
You want to answer plenty questions, yeah? He asked
I thought there was a third
questions.
question.
No.
Are you sure about that?
Yes. If there is and we didn't hear, he will call back, but I don't think there is.
Oh, okay. I don't think there's a third question. All right.
081.
Thank you. I hope you got that, Mr. Wisdom.
I'm sure he did. Okay, let's see who's here. Hello? Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Please turn off your radio.
It's off already.
Okay, go ahead. What's your name?
Thank you. And I'm James.
Sorry?
James.
Okay, James.
I'm
Please go
listening,
ahead.
Mr. James.
Yeah. Yes. It's a good topic to talk about. Men and Nigerians are said to be disciplined now, and they beat their wives and they throw them into the street, and that we are wicked. But let's look at the problem. The young wives of this era are not disciplined like their mothers. Because they are educated, they think they have so many liberties. And what is causing this brutality in the house, in most cases, is infidelity by these young women, these young wives. They meet and drink and discuss problems we have in our various houses and married men. And seriously, talk about infidelity by modern Nigerian women, married women. In my early 70s and 80s, you couldn't keep two girlfriends at a time. All of your friends will abandon you. No lady could sleep with two guys at the same time. They will abandon. She's like an outcast. But today it's like acceptable. In most cases of brutality of wives in the house, infidelity is the cause. While you are making a case for the safety of women in marriages, please also advise young women of today to reduce the practice of ashawo.
The topic is not for women. It's
for
not
all
just for
persons,
women.
sir. I am not here to. It's for all persons who are undergoing violence, domestic violence. So it's for all persons.
Because of we break their answer because their ashawo is too much in this area. And that is the truth.
Okay.
There are two sides to the amount of justice. Okay?
All right, Mr. James.
Don't only blame men for it. Also blame the men for too much ashawo. It's too much. It's annoying. It's unbearable.
Okay, it's all right. Mr. James, obviously you've not listened. Can you please calm down? Oh, I think he really is upset.
Sorry about
I
that,
don't know.
Mr.
I don't know
James.
what your experiences have
I don't know
been.
what
Really, yeah.
But
But then if you have really been following, we started from the bottom actually, and here we are right now. Okay, talking about where and who could be, violated,
yeah.
in a domestic way, and it could be to the man or to the woman, and.
yes. And then
please,
the cases of
let's
infidelity is
not
applicable
even
to
start
all
that.
of them, both men and women.
I don't even want it to get into that because it would be
No,
like a
really, but it
huge...
is. But it is, yeah, really. So I'm sorry about your experience, but it's applicable to both parties.
It sure is.
It's applicable to both. But here we're talking about protection of persons.
Yeah. So whether
All
you
persons,
whether you are
whether
a man
or a
and your
woman.
wife has been abusing you in one way or the other, there is a way out. If you're a
Yes.
woman and your husband has been abusing you, there is also a way out. So thank you for your input. 08189991011. This will probably be our last call. Hello.
Hello?
Good morning. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can hear you now.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Tomori, and I'm calling from Lagos.
Okay.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Am I on to Probono's chamber?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I have a question that I would like to ask.
Okay.
Yeah. First, I would like to commend your efforts on the program for answering people's questions and giving them ideas about the legal aspect of things.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. My question is kind of like general, and it's it's a bit legal though. It goes thus: if you have a petition against somebody, or let's say against the government or against an establishment, is there a law that can be used to, like, say, there has to be a duration? Is there a law that says there has to be a duration, or how will I put it? Like kind of like a time frame.
Okay.
You get what I mean?
Yes. I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean.
Okay. So let's say I have a petition against the, let's say, federal government, for instance, or an establishment, or a, let's say, force headquarters, and the petition is submitted. Am I supposed to give them an ultimatum of how many days they need to respond, or there is days in law that says, okay, you get?
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
So, if you have a petition and you're taking it to court and it's against a particular organization, let's say a public institution or a person in a public institution, there's a duration of time. It's called, some matters are actually statute barred. So there's a duration of time that, you must take to institute an action. If not, it will be statute barred. So, but then when you have already tendered your petition, you've already commenced an action.
Yes.
Yeah, so it can take, a period of time as long as possible before you get your awards or your remedies to the end of the matter, like at the end of the matter or the judgments. But then before commencing an action, that is when the period of time starts counting. So, for instance, against a public officer or a public official of a public institution, it's a period of 3 to 6 months.
Okay, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, but it depends on your grievances, actually. So if you don't commence an action within that period, it can be statute barred.
Okay. Then the next action can be taken from there on.
No, when it's statute barred, that means you can't commence an action again concerning that particular matter that you're aggrieved of.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay.
But once you've commenced an action, there's no there's no lifespan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think I get that.
You're welcome.
All right. You have a nice day. Yeah.
You too. And thank you for calling all the way from Lagos City. Well, that should do for Probono Chambers today. Many thanks to those who called in with their questions. I do hope you have them all satisfactorily answered. If not, like always, we'll do this again tomorrow. You can re-ask the question again if there's anything such as that. Is there any other thing you'd want to say, Adana?
Okay, yeah, finally, we had a caller who misunderstood me, so I would like to make him understand that, we're here for everybody, really, for both the men and the women, regarding of, the circumstances. We don't know what the circumstances might be, but whatever circumstances that would have caused the situation that caused the domestic violence, we don't know, but we're here for both parties to make sure that we educate you as victims or survivors to understand that you have remedies available for you. There are adequate compensations for victims and survivors. The Act has ensured that, and then the Act also makes a provision for rehabilitation and reintegration of these persons into the society, as well as the protection of persons who make complaints concerning the issues that has to do with domestic violence. So whether you're a man or a woman, the Act protects you generally.
Okay, that does it on Probono Chambers today. Many thanks for participating. We'll do this again tomorrow, God willing. Do stay with us on Human Rights Radio 101.1 FM. My name is Ruth Usman, and I will see you tomorrow.
Welcome, my dear friends.
Human